So, welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Nerd News Desk. Today is Wednesday, December something 18th. No idea. I know Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming soon, and I think I've got everything ordered for everybody. Now it's just going to be a matter of hoping it all shows up in time. But today we're going to be talking about comics because, well, it's New Comic Book Day. Bunch of stuff came out. Of course, we've got the end of Tom King's run on Batman. We've got the end of Doomsday Clock. We've got one of my favorite books of all time, cult classic. And then we're going to be taking a look at SpiderHam for next week. I did get J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man. I've got Justice League. Haven't read them yet, so I can't really talk a whole lot about those. But first, before we dive into everything else, I do want to give the shout out to cult classic Creature Feature. I love this comic. This is a super fun, awesome comic. So basically, I talked about this a little bit yesterday when we were talking about the new stuff that would be coming out. Now that I've had a chance to read it, again, still love the series. Comet has fallen in this small town. I guess it's not a comet anymore once it hits the ground, right? Then it's a meteorite, I think, once it enters the atmosphere, or when it actually touches down. Meteorite. Anyway, it crashes. The slug things come out, turning people into monsters. The small town is being overrun. This all takes place over the span of, I think we're on day 2 by now. But really fun, really good 80s horror vibes, and also 50s monster creature stuff going on. The artwork is actually surprisingly good. A lot of times when you get a comic from a small press company, you have to question whether or not the art is going to be something that you'll actually enjoy. There are a lot of times when there's a book that seems like it might be interesting, but then once I look at the artwork, I'm like, I'm not going to read that, But I do think the art in this has been fairly good. Horror is a tough thing to get across in comics. Horror has a tendency to... You can't really build suspense. You can't really get away with gore the same way. So you have to have characters that you really care about and then put them in a situation where they might not get out of it. You can't do this with normal characters. It's got to be characters that feel real, characters that you actually like. So there's a lot of little things that have to go into making it the way it is. And this, I think, does a good job of making horror work. For those on audio only, it's difficult to describe. I'm going to say there's sort of a Jeff Lemire quality to the line work. There's the coloring on it is actually, I think, a really important part of the overall look. The colorist on this... here, let's go through. Written and created by Elliot Rahal, illustrated by John Bivens, colored by Jerry and Monahan, and lettered by Taylor Esposito. One of the things is the artwork in here. The artists... Oh, I didn't silence my phone. Sorry about that. The artist on this, Bivens, a lot of times he draws the sound effects. So when... like, for instance, the one I was showing a minute ago, there's a character here who's spitting water out. He actually draws in the P, F, 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 T, 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 T as he's, doing a spit take. We can see here there's lightning going off, and he draws in the krakow. Again, a Jeff Lemire quality to the line work on this. But then the coloring really adds something where... let's see if I can find one. They have a flamethrower at one point, and they're burning something alive, and it really, lights up the scene. They know how to do dark corners, the dark stuff. They're in a dark room at night, not a lot of light, and so the colors are very muted, and then that flamethrower hits, and it gets bright. But the line work, it's interesting in the comic. If we look at, some of these panels, just to compare them real quick, there's a panel here where the line art is very thick. A lot of bold black lines. It looks, it's a close-up of one of these slug creatures coming out of the faucet, and the lines are really thick and dark, as if the artist has enlarged their canvas, probably did a lot of this drawing digitally, and went with the thicker line work because it's closer. And I bring that up because 2 pages later, when they're zoomed out on the people, the line work is very small and very light. It's not consistent. As things tend to zoom in, the line work gets thicker. As they zoom out, it gets thinner, which makes me think it's digital because they're able to kind of go in and out. But it's interesting because it makes the world look more consistent. So when you're zooming in, it doesn't look like the same art as when you're zoomed out. It actually looks like it's smaller. I don't know how to explain. But it's really good. It's really good. I really enjoy this book a lot. Like I said, I haven't read J.J. Abrams' Spider-Man or Justice League yet, but this may actually be my favorite of this week. And of course, I did buy some of the other stuff that I said I would. The Marvel Tales Annihilation, which reprints a bunch of old books. I did get that. The Eternals one-shot that reprints, this was an old What If story, gets reprinted, so I bought that. I did buy the Flash dollar comic and the Eternals facsimile edition. So I bought a lot in reprinted old comics instead of new comics, and that to me is somewhat interesting. Yeah, so the big things though, Doomsday Clock and Batman are both about endings. So we're going to start with Batman. Tom King's run is over. This is an overpriced. This is a $5.99 thicker book. It's got extra pages. The cover is a cardstock. I don't know if it's supposed to be some sort of like premium edition or something like that, but the story does not feel like an oversized story, and I think that's part of the problem. It's one of the problems I've had with a lot of Tom King stuff. It doesn't feel like you got any more story than a normal issue, because again, there's a lot of full page where there's just some dialogue. The opening page, it's only 4 panels. It's 5 word balloons. It technically really could be 1 panel. Like everything that happens in that page could be 1 panel, because literally none of the characters move. If you look at Thomas Wayne in that first box, and you look at him there at the bottom, it's the same pose. He's ready to pounce. He's getting ready to pounce. Catwoman, I guess she does sit down. She gets into motion, but Batman and Thomas don't move. Psycho Pirate doesn't move. And Psycho Pirate doesn't do anything. I don't know why he's there. Whatever he was supposed to do, nothing happened. So I'm not sure why he's in the story. Then we get, a full page of Thomas Wayne sitting in a bar watching a football game with the common man, and there's some play-by-play for the football game there at the top. Gridiron football, just to point that out. And again, it's like, that's a whole page. It's a whole page of him just sitting there. Like, I'm glad we wasted a whole page on that. And this is a lot of my criticism for the way Tom King works out these stories. He wastes a lot of space. He's trying too hard in his mind to direct a movie with unmoving pictures. So in an effort to be cinematic, he wastes so much space. He wastes so much time. The moments in between each panel, they're infinitesimally small, usually, because he wants to show you every motion that people are making. And it gets pretty bad. Here we see Gotham Girl and Batman climbing up a tower, so 3/4 of the page is just wasted on this drawing of a tower with 2 word balloons and nothing else going on. And a lot of the book is like this. A lot of the book, it'll take you 5 seconds to read the page and move on. And I'm going to throw out some spoilers, okay? So if you don't want to hear spoilers, just kind of skip ahead maybe a minute. Batman and Catwoman decide to get together, and they're gonna do it. They're gonna get married, but then they forget to go see the judge. But they go, it doesn't matter. We gave each other the rings. We know we mean it, so they consider themselves married now, even though they actually aren't. The judge's name is Wolfman, for Marv Wolfman. They gave us a 2-page spread, again, looking back on the history of the characters as if we need to be reminded of anything. Like, again, wasted 2 pages, giving you absolutely nothing. Thomas Wayne gets thrown into jail. Of course, he gets defeated. He goes into Arkham, and so Bane kills him. And I'm not sure, again, it doesn't actually show him dying, but that's what it intimates. It's supposed to be his death, and it shows the resolution of what happens with Thomas Wayne in Arkham Asylum happens before the resolution of what happens in Wayne Manor. So we go forward in time to Thomas Wayne getting destroyed, and then we go back in time to his fight with Batman. So once you go back to Wayne Manor and him fighting with Batman, you lose whatever drama there might be building because you know how it ends. Because you've already seen far beyond that. It doesn't work. And then we've got 3 more pages at the end of him sitting in the bar talking about football, how there's always a chance, whatever. And then Selena Kyle comes, and that's that. And then we get a couple pages leading into James Tinian's new story, and it's going to be the return of the Joker. So Joker's back. Joker cut off his face at one point. Have they undone that? Or do they just say, like, somebody sewed it back and now you can't even tell he ever cut it off in the first place? Like, what happened with all that? I don't even remember that being addressed. This was not worth $5.99, but it's worth $5.99 to know that Tom King is done. I'm just glad it's over. Again, I'm still considering maybe getting rid of these books, even though I just bought another one. Like, now that it's over, maybe I'll take this whole chunk from Rebirth. Rebirth #1, when he took over, and just let these 85 issues go. I don't know if they're going to be worth anything or not. But not impressed. Not psyched for this final. I don't think it was this poetic great ending. There was nothing particularly special. It didn't really resolve anything other than everything that you expected was going to happen anyway. There were no twists. There was nothing exciting. There was nothing fun. There was nothing particularly memorable, except maybe that Gotham Girl is apparently going to have powers again, based off an old Silver Age trope, which, I mean, that's fine, but it is what it is, and I don't know. Not my favorite book this week. So, of course, then there's the other book this week, Doomsday Clock. And I've been waiting so long for the end of this because all I wanted was a reboot of the DC Universe. All I wanted them to do was to fix everything in the time stream. And they kind of don't. Oh my goodness. One of the key things about this book, and you've probably gotten this from reading the other issues in the series, is that Superman is a key part of the DC universe, in case you didn't know. And the Watchmen universe apparently was so dark and twisted and unhappy because there was no Superman in it. And the idea that every crisis and every reset of the DC universe, even including stuff like when we went from the Golden Age to the Silver Age heroes, when characters were kind of reset and reimagined, Superman's still there. Superman, the idea was they wanted, the universe tries to preserve a version of Superman for every era of history. So therefore, the universe always has like this schism. The multiverse always comes because there has to be some version of Superman in order to keep the universe going. And Superman's probably a better bet than Batman to bet that on, even though they've been trying really hard to make Batman the character. I think this makes a good point that it should be Superman. The problem is the story, it really goes out of its way to try to show you that Dr. Manhattan made some huge changes. That's what created the Flashpoint, the New 52. He manipulated so many things in order to change Superman and whatever. Then when we come out of it, there are some changes done to history. The universe is changed, but nothing that's changed in this book is changed anywhere else in the DC universe. And there have been big changes recently in the DC universe that are not reflected by anything that happens in here. For instance, we see Superboy, Clark Kent, Kal-El, he becomes Superboy as a teen, right? Except that the Superman we have right now never was Superboy. And in fact, the Superman that we have now, in fact, is the Superman from the post-crisis, pre-Zero Hour era. It might be post-Zero Hour, pre-Infinite Crisis at least. So anyway, this explains how the Legion of Superheroes is there and whatever. But we've seen the Legion of Superheroes exist recently, and the Legion of Superheroes that they show are the new ones, the reimagined, with the new haircuts, the new outfits, the new... I won't go there, but you know what I'm talking about. They've made changes to it, and when they show the Legion of Superheroes, they're showing that Legion. So this is the new Legion, and he remembers them from his days as Superboy, except he just met the Legion 2 months ago, and he didn't remember them from his days as Superboy. And they... or did they? I don't think so. No. Because they came back for his son in order to take his son into the future. Because the son was the one in history that they wanted, because the son came up with the galactic planet United Nations, right? So this doesn't make sense. It doesn't... He becomes scrawny Superboy again, but he remembers Legion of Superheroes, but when they reappeared, he doesn't remember them. So we do have this spread of all these characters that are coming back. So we've got the Golden Age Justice Society and the All-Star Squadron characters are there. The ones that more recently were Earth 2. Now they're back in the history supposedly of the DC universe. It shows Superman in the Golden Age, and then it shows Earth 2 being born. It shows the schism with the Crisis. It shows that new world being born. It talks about Flashpoint. It talks about Rebirth, New 52. And then it talks about in the future. So then it talks about, let's see, in January 2026, Earth 5G is born. July 10th, 2030, the Secret Crisis begins. April 18th, 2038, Superman appears in public for the first time. Superman's timeline is shifted forward again, April 18th, 2038. There's another one, and another one, and another one, and so whatever timeline he fixed, it's not the timeline that we have. Wherever this makes sense is not the world that we're reading the comics right now. So there's some other multiverse reality out there that he actually fixed, and the New 52 Rebirth one that we're currently in still exists, But we're stuck in this one. We can't get to this good one. We can't get to this one where everything makes sense. And then there's this dumb stuff with the terrible actor in the 40s that he knew, or 50s, whatever, and now this terrible actor becomes like this beacon of hope and whatever. He comes back, he's the greatest actor of all time, gets a star on the Walk of Fame. All of that's really dumb. And then there's some manipulation that goes on with Dr. Manhattan in order to steal a character from another reality and to bring him basically into the reality of the Watchmen universe so that they can have their own Clark Kent. So the Watchmen universe can get a Superman. So, again, this feels much more like Final Crisis than Crisis, or even Infinite Crisis, which I wasn't a real big fan of either, but it was alright. But this does feel a lot more like Final Crisis, where Final Crisis had this ending where Superman builds this dream machine, whatever, and he sings the perfect song, and it resets reality the way Superman wanted it. And that's kind of what happens here. Reality is reset, everything is fixed in the timeline, except it's not, and it doesn't. So, except for the parts that aren't, it is. So, figure out how that works. And this, again, $5.99. It's thick. It's got plenty of pages, but it's just not... The story is not crafted in such a way where you get done reading it and you're like, wow, this changes the DC universe. Because this doesn't change the DC universe. The DC universe we're in is still the same one we've been stuck in for quite a while. It didn't fix. And the times that they've tried to fix the DC universe, they've noticed that there have been moments where people have wanted like the real Superman back, so to speak. Well, the real Superman they wanted back, they brought back the one from the 90s. They got rid of the New 52 version of Superman. But then the rest of the universe doesn't get fixed. You know, the other things don't change. And the world... Okay, so Mom and Pa Kent, though, are apparently still alive. Metropolis is a lot cleaner and nicer looking. But the changes of Superman unmasking and whatever, getting rid of the Clark Kent secret identity, that's not addressed in here at all. It has nothing to do with this, and nothing in that story that's going on in the Superman books of him giving up his identity says anything about his parents still being alive, because one of the reasons you would have the secret identity is to protect them. But they're not there, which is part of his justification for dropping it. There's no need to keep them safe because they're not around anymore, and now they're back. So yeah, it's a mess. It's creating more confusion than fixing the problem. It hasn't been done right, and I mean, granted, it's a year late. Some of this stuff should have already happened and should have already been reflected in the books, and they haven't done it because of the great delays in this book. And I get that. But if you're going to make these changes, you're still going to finish the series, you're still going to let something like this happen, then it's got to work itself out and be reflected in the current books. And this, it's not. So, both of those books... not the great endings that we had hoped for. And I know there's going to be plenty of people that disagree. That's fine, whatever. Look, if you thought it was worth every penny of the $6 that you paid for each of those issues, then great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But I will tell you, the majority of people who are going to end up buying this book are not going to be happy with it. Okay, most people are not going to enjoy it. Just like most people did not enjoy The Last Jedi. And you can say, "Wow, no, it's you know, whatever." No, it's like 43% approval rating. Like of The Last Jedi. And the new Star Wars looks to be just as divisive, if not more, for different reasons from different people on different sides of the argument. There are people that reading the reviews and stuff. There are people that don't like it because it seems to stab Ryan Johnson in the back, and there are people that don't like it because it doesn't do enough to fix the problems that he created. There's just so that's where we are with those books. It's not a clear-cut winner like some other books are. There are some books that everybody just sort of universally loves that are great, like Vision. Vision was great. Tom King writes Batman, not great. Not great. What is pretty great, though, is Peter Porker Spectacular Spider-Ham. This officially comes out next week, but I'm a rule breaker. Oh, and I did read through the Marvel Incoming #1, and I didn't read it very closely. Just kind of skimmed through it quickly, because it's something that I knew I wasn't going to be too excited about. But if you've been reading the Marvel, you read the Marvel 1000, and there's the Eternity Mask or whatever the thing is. That whole thing comes up. It's kind of jumping through different points in history of the Marvel Universe, and it's just, again, the writing changes every few pages, the artwork changes every few pages. It's really kind of off-putting the way it feels. It feels like a book cobbled together. It doesn't feel like this great collaboration. It feels like a bunch of junk pressed together to try to make a book, and for me that just doesn't do it, and I don't care. I mean, that's really, I think, the main point that it comes down to. I still haven't, after reading Marvel 1000 and after reading and so then Incoming sets up for it's called Incoming because there's, again, something from Marvel's past that's being redone. And it has to do with aliens who can change shape and their empire wanting to destroy Earth. And I'll say it like that, and the people who know, you instantly know what I'm talking about, and those that don't, maybe you'll be surprised by it, maybe you'll enjoy it, but I was not impressed. All right, we are going to jump into SpiderHam here because I actually did like this book. There were some things that I didn't like about it, but there were more things I did enjoy. One thing I thought was really kind of fun was the first couple pages are done in this old school Marvel Star Comics style, retelling the origin of SpiderHam. It's that really overly cartoony kids comic that you expect. But then when it gets into the actual story, we have this anthropomorphic, it's a better art style. It's very shaded. Looks like a lot of coloring. The colorist, Rick. I'll just show you. Rick Arsenigia. The coloring, he put a lot of depth and shadow and shading and texture and stuff into the artwork, and you can really see it there, how certain characters stand out, how things, they have a feel to them. You can feel, it looks like certain things have a texture to them that looks nice. Now, Peter Porker, SpiderHam himself, he's kind of a jerk. He's a self-obsessed idiot, really, and that's the one problem I kind of have with it. He comes back from the Spider-Verse multiverse stuff that's been going on, and he's very full of himself, self-righteous, and there's almost none of the cartoony stuff that you expect. There's no anvils falling on people. You don't have a lot of people getting hit, and you see like the cartoony lines coming out from their head, and Tweety birds around them, and that kind of stuff. Which I was a little sad that they didn't do all that, but overall, though, I think there's more positives than negatives in this book. Again, they don't like him. The Avengers, or the Scarvengers, is that what they're called? Scavengers. They Mooster, fantastic. The Submarsupial, the Black Colt, the Bee Yonder, Croctor Strange, Iron Mouse. Come on, that's just good times. Nonetheless, the story is there's some multiversial threat. And at first I thought it was a Venom thing, because it started to turn these characters into like black and white versions of themselves, but instead that's, I think, just the gimmick to show that they've been infected by something. So it's not the Venom thing coming over them, it's just black and white, and I don't know if that's going to be some inference to old animation styles or what the deal is with that. But of course, SpiderHam, having just done the multiverse stuff with Spider-Verse, decides that he's going to be the one to take on this mission, even though the Avengers don't want him to. And so he ends up stealing the MacGuffin device that transports people between universes so that he can go and be the one to do it. So it is fun. It is kind of a quick read, though. Again, for a $4 comic. For a $4 comic, it just on its own, in the realm of movies and video games and YouTube videos and things like that, as a paying $4 for the entertainment that you get out of it, it's no better than any other comic. Comics are a bad entertainment proposition overall, and we've discussed that. But in the era of $4 comics, this is one of the more entertaining $4 comics that you can get. It's one of the ones that the story makes sense. The characters are well-rounded enough that you understand who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. It's enjoyable. There's no agendas. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not trying to remake a character. Again, a little upset with the way that Peter Porker was full of himself, but at the same time, it's what you needed to go forward. And you could say it works because of the stuff that he just did. That he did have a moment. Maybe the series will be him getting back to that point of being an actual hero. And maybe that'll be the thing that motivates the story, that moves it, forward. And that's fine. That's fine. So if that's the case, then that's the case. And it'll be I think it'll be a good series. So anyway, yeah. So those are the comics came out today that I was looking at. Again, I guess these reprint ones I haven't read. Well, some of these I read years ago, and some of them I haven't. But as far as like the new stuff coming out, get a shot for the thumbnail here. As far as the new stuff coming out, this is the stuff that I've read so far. And actually, let's see. In terms, backwards. Let's say in terms of enjoyment. Wait. I have to turn these around. I'm trying to do it backwards by looking in the screen, and that's not going to work. Okay. So in terms of enjoyment, there's what we got. So, all right. So anyway, that's that, and I keep sliding. I had to. My cat. Cats. If you own cats, is there any way to keep all the cat's fluids in the cat, or just in the right space where they're supposed to go? When it comes to things like hairballs, cat drool, out of the litter box problems, how do you keep your cat from leaking? This is the third. Well, this is the cat we've had the longest, and granted, she's almost 18 now, I think. So let's see. Well, it's going to be 2020, so she'll be, I think, turning 18 this week. So she's an old cat. I'll give you that. But the three cats we've had, they've all had problems drooling or hairballs or whatever So anyway, nonetheless, when you have a cat, you change the sheets more often than the once a week that you would normally do, because a lot of times they leave you fun little presents. And so you go to climb into bed and you take your feet and you slide them down in the covers and you hit that mushy pile it's cold and it's got the hair and the slime, and people go, "Yay, your cat's so cute." The cat's not cute at that point in time. All right, that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thanks for watching. Not going to ask you to like, not going to ask you to subscribe, not going to ask you to join my Patreon, which I don't even have. Not going to ask you to share or click that bell. I'm just going to ask that you remember this one thing. You're watching the best looking guy on the internet.